This is Mike Swanson, and you're listening to the Wall Street Window podcast. In a few moments, I want to be speaking with Carmine Savastano. Carmine is the author of the book Two Princes and a King and the book Human Time Bomb. And we're going to be speaking about an article he wrote titled The Corporate Morality Mask. It's about how corporations have gotten themselves involved in cultural and social issues in order to promote themselves and make the public like them and want to do business with them. And we're in a funny moment for corporations because, as I'm speaking, 20% of corporations in the United States that trade on the stock market are so-called zombie companies. This means that they have amassed so much debt that they're now in a position where all they can do is service that debt. They're not able to innovate. They're not able to do much more than service their debts because their business prospects have collapsed. On one hand, it's easy to blame that on the economic shutdowns, the slowdown in the economy that's been very dramatic this year. But this is also a legacy of a decade of an orgy of issuing junk bond debt that has highly indebted these corporations going into this year before the month of March and all the troubles that began with it. There are, in fact, corporations that don't turn any profits and have billions of dollars in junk bond debt. Tesla is one such company, and so is Netflix. And if we think about Tesla and the corporate morality mask, it's an example of a company that has successfully marketed itself as a massive innovator to attract stock market investors and people to buy the debt. So it's a symbol of how the right marketing can drive a mania into people buying stocks, but as Carmine shows, it can do so much more. So one quick commercial break, and then we'll be speaking with Carmine Savastano.
Carmine Savastano, Human Time Bomb, The Violence Within Our Nature, poses significant questions and considers the evidence that violence shapes the past and present. Author and Professor David T. Beato calls it an impressive tour de force. Savastano shows a mastery of relevant work in biology, anthropology, and intelligence. Each chapter will challenge readers to rethink old assumptions. Doctor of Psychology R. Blackstock notes, "It is a long, hard look into the potency of our collective shadow that is extremely relevant in today's socio-political climate." Historian and author Larry Hancock declares, "This work is a slap on the back of the head, a wake-up call, and a serious reality check as to the true human condition." Order your digital and print copies now on Amazon.com. For more information, visit tpaak.com.
Hey, Carmine, how you doing today?
I'm good, Mike. Good to be back.
Well, you've written an interesting article on your website, tpaak.com, and I'm going to link to it so people can read the entire thing themselves, but it's titled The Corporate Morality Mask. What's the mask you're talking about?
Well, I think that there is a very well-fashioned mask that corporations wear in modern times that is designed to make people identify them and sort of personify them, give them a personal face that people can somehow make a connection with, when in reality, there's something below that mask. That mask is just the actions you see, the actions they want you to see. And I understand some people will be like, well, there's a lot of good corporations. And yes, there are some good corporations, but those corporations don't try to influence you. For instance, I think people need to be able to distinguish between advocacy corporations and just corporations. Corporations are supposed to sell you things. They're not supposed to be your friend. They're not supposed to try to connect with you in an emotional way. They're not supposed to influence your voting. They're not supposed to affect you at all, except in the cash exchange for goods. That's what they're supposed to do. They're a business. They're supposed to be in the business of making money, and that's what they should focus on. That's what a genuine business is. Someone who admits, we're in this for profit, but we're going to provide a quality service or good to you, and it's worth it. Now, the problem is that a lot of modern corporations have attempted to sort of moralize, to give their messages morality that it doesn't actually possess, And the reason I call it the morality mask is because that is there to distract you. It is not there. They're not a benevolent person as the mask would appear. They, beneath it, are a money-making entity, and that is their primary goal, no matter what the mask looks like.
Well, one of the things it popped in my back of my head when I was reading your article was Walmart several years ago. They tried to expand into Europe and into China. They failed in both places, but in China, they had a Walmart like you would go to, but at the entrance, they painted a mural that had two figures on it. One was of a man. I worked at Walmart when I was in high school, and at that time, they used to sell these books of Sam Walton. Mm-hmm. He, I think, was still alive. Yeah, when I was working there, and then he died, or he died while I was working there. But anyway, they had these Sam Walton books all over the place. So I was familiar with seeing his face. And in China, what they did was they had on the mural an image of Sam Walton next to an image of Mao, with them walking hand in hand in a field.
Charming.
They're probably both smiling, I'm sure.
Oh, I have no doubt. Tyrants are always smiling when they're in pictures.
But I'm thinking of the morality mask, because the image of Walmart has a smile in the United States on most of their marketing, and in China they had the mural for that audience.
Yeah. They're not usually high-fiving dictators.
Yeah, they wouldn't put that. They wouldn't use that United States.
Maybe in Cuba they had like a Walton high-fiving Castro in a mural, and
yeah.
Idi Amin high-fiving Sam Walton in a mural, and it's just laughable, and that's why I felt the need to write the article, because I see people I know like believing some of this, like thinking that these corporations have morality. No, they don't. They're corporations. I mean, and you don't have to just assume. I mean, people might say, well, you're just assuming the worst. And no, you can look at the article that Mike's going to link, and I have, I think, 25 sources from all across the political spectrum of different media groups and different studies, and you can look and see there's one thing we can always consistently count upon that every corporation will do, one behavior they all have in common, and that is they will lie to protect their interests. They will always lie. And people might say, well, when do they lie to us? Cigarettes, car crashes, faulty equipment, poisoning natural resources. Hang on, there's more. Asbestos, dangerous chemicals in our lives, in paint, lead. How many drugs that were ineffective, or they hid the effects of what they did to people. I mean, this is a common occurrence. Corporations pay out huge amounts of money all the time to get non-disclosure agreements to cover up deaths that they cause by their incompetence or malfeasance. That happens all the time. Just because it's not reported on doesn't mean it's not happening.
Well, I mean, there was at one time before we were alive that cigarettes have gone through, all products for that matter, they go through different stages of marketing, of what message works. Mm-hmm. And there was a time way before we were born that cigarettes were marketed as if they were good for you.
They used to be in the MREs in World War II.
Yeah. So I think that might be when it started. I think after World War II is probably when that started to end, and maybe it was like the 20s, 30s, 40s, where they were marketed as kind of being good for you, and then by the time we were born, it was no longer about the cigarette being good for you, or even the
Yeah.
cigarette itself, but a lifestyle linking the cigarette to the Marlboro Man, and this kind of stuff.
Eventually.
Yeah, and like it's if you smoke a cigarette, you're cool, or so I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No.
You're a cowboy, or you're you
Yeah.
know, and really, a lot of things nowadays are so commonly marketed that way. You know, and another example, and then I'll shut up, is there was a commercial for Coca-Cola made in 1971. Again, this I was born in 75, so this is 4 years before I was born, where Coca-Cola had a commercial where these people were on a hill singing. I like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. And they would say that like over and over, I think, were the lyrics. But they were basically co-opting, if you would, or presenting themselves as corollaries to the hippie movement.
Yeah, the peace movement.
In the 60s and so forth. And then very successfully. So successfully that even though this commercial was made 4 years before I was born, I can remember it. So it must have been playing for a decade, over 10 years, I guess, a very long time.
Yeah.
So I guess I say that to say, one, this is how they market, but also it is extremely effective.
Oh yeah, well, and that's the thing, is that we can see, if people read into some of these subjects, they'll see that there are marketing styles that almost mimic, in some cases, psychological operations and intelligence operations. I mean, they are designed to make you react certain ways. They're designed to push certain buttons in you that they know exist in most people, and that's why they're effective. It's not because they're representing necessarily a good or useful product to you. It's that they make you want whatever it is, even if it's nonsense. Like, for instance, remember the pet rock in the 70s?
Yeah.
They actually had people buying rocks with names. Like rocks you could go into your backyard and get a pile of rocks and sell them to people for exorbitant prices. So they can market anything to us. It's just a question of looking in the market and seeing why it's being done. And, unfortunately now, what was only extended to the more less illustrious fields has now grown into almost every field. There's marketing and advertising affecting, I don't know if we've talked about this off the air, Mike, but Bill Hicks had a great line. He used to say, if you're in marketing, kill yourself.
Okay.
But anyway.
Well, he would have said that over 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But what now is making you want to, made you write the article now?
Well, now I think what it is they're trying to tap into morality.
Okay.
They have used up all of the things that used to affect people. I mean, some are always going to be effective to some extent, but I think that the most effective things in the past, which were, I'd say, like, it depends on the decade, but I would say in the 90s it was a more peaceful, more, they called them the we generation, or that was the marketing that was put out anyway. So it was about helping people and being nice to people and everybody being one, almost sort of a cheaper version of the hippie thing. But in the 2000s, things started to change, society started to change. And I think that once the internet really changed it, once viral marketing got into it, and once they were able to do a 24/7 news cycle where you can't escape, and I think that's one of the big problems. I think that's why some people who are experiencing addictive tendencies with technology can't get away. There's something in the human mind, and feel free to look up, people can look up some of the research, or if you ever want to talk about in the future, I can always try to get some of the studies that were done. But basically, there's an inherent need in human beings to forget, especially bad things.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to remember every bad thing you hear about someone. You're not supposed to remember every bad thing that happens in the world. And the problem with the internet and overuse is it doesn't let you forget. You can never forget. It's right there at your fingertips. You have to let it go away sometimes. And that is fueling not only, but see, the corporations don't want that to happen. Everything is designed to be as addictive as possible. You know, they want your engagement. That's why all the advertising is geared towards clicks.
Right.
They want to know you're there. They want to know you're reading, and they are prepared to give you whatever they need to give you. And that's where the problem comes in, because it ceases, like in the case of entertainment or media or something that is an intangible rather than, you know, like an actual product. They want to engage you, and some of them don't care how they do it. So they will give you misinformation. They will give you biased reporting, because they need your emotional engagement. They don't care if you're mentally engaged anymore, some of them, it seems. They need you emotionally engaged.
Well, I've done advertising on the internet for 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And the headlines for stock market information, the first ads I ran, and the thing about the internet was when you run ads on Google or these networks, you can put in 50 different combinations and they'll just test them all off one another. And then other people are doing the same thing. So everything, what's the word for it? Over time, it evolves over time. It's anyway, the very first ads I ran said something in them. It was a simple headline. It said, "Learn technical analysis," and this would run on stock trading websites. Well, technical analysis means stock charting.
Mm-hmm.
But the key word there is learn. So the person that would click the ad is someone that wants to learn something.
Okay.
That implies that they want to spend the time to learn something or believe they need to. Well, those ads won't work if I try to run them now at all.
Because people's attention spans have shortened, because people aren't
Well,
usually, unless it's a real important subject, they're probably not going to be as interested in learning something new.
well, it's the stock market world 20 years ago. The people that would get on the internet were people that wanted to learn. You know, if they're in, they would respond to learning about it.
Yeah.
Stock market people that, let me see if I can put this right. People that wanted to get into the stock market, they wanted to learn. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, they don't. All they want is a stock pick or someone making a crazy prediction that everything's going to crash or everything's going to go up. And the messaging as a result has gotten all full of, it's all extreme hype.
Yeah.
And almost no content. Another way to explain this would be 15 years ago, to sell a $50 newsletter, you would have to write something like 20,000 words long. Mm-hmm. With all the details of what it is, the proof of it, all this information. They would want a lot of information.
Yeah.
Now there is no now it's like 600 words and just pure hype and a video of someone making a lot of claims.
Well, and that makes total sense, because you'll see that across the board for a lot of subjects, especially important subjects like finance or science or history. They'll make a video that's like 5 or 10 minutes. They'll fill it full of a bunch of fluff. They might have 1 or 2 pieces of decent information, and that's it. And that's they're using the psychological method. The visual element gives them more interest. You know, remember Kramer before everything tanked, and he was like a guru to some people.
Right.
You know, the sell, the buy. He had a bunch of noises. He had a bunch of lights. He had a bunch of sounds. He danced around. You know, I mean, it wasn't about what he was doing. It was about the show.
Mm-hmm.
And that unfortunately has seemed to have bled into other things, serious subjects that it shouldn't have, where people are now more interested, and that's where the moralizing comes in. See, the corporations, what people don't, and I'm not saying everybody, I'm sure there's a lot of people that do understand, but what a lot of people don't understand is they're not doing it because they are moral, and they're not doing it because they want to help your morality. Your morality is a means for them. What they can do is, like, for instance, let's take a look at a bunch of the corporations that are now currently getting behind Black Lives Matters.
Right.
They're not getting behind Black Lives Matters because they care about Black Lives Matters. They're saying that. But they're getting behind Black Lives Matters, one, because it's a shield. It shields them from criticism. That's the first reason. The second reason they're getting behind Black Lives Matters is because they're afraid. They don't want their corporate properties attacked. So they're doing it for that reason. Another reason is because then they can institute some of what I would consider the more unreasonable things that some of the more unreasonable members of Black Lives Matter want into their corporate structure. So let's say someone says they feel unsafe, and that turns into an unsafe work environment, and thus the corporation must protect itself, so that person must be fired. Now, some of them are setting up anonymous complaints of feeling unsafe can do that. So now they can fabricate an anonymous complaint to get rid of you. It doesn't matter what you did. It doesn't matter if you're a racist. You just go away. That's what they want. They want a constant review, ongoing forever. And if you get out of line, you're gone.
Well, if someone gets fired like that, they'd be able to sue.
Well, they would, but I think once this sort of stuff gets into enough corporations, that's going to be a lot harder, or you're going to have to sign off your rights when you work there.
Well, I don't.
I'm just saying. I can see this. It's possible. It's possible.
Well, it'd be very difficult to run a business if you just fire people based on things like that, unless you want to fire them already. And you just use it as an excuse.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they would fabricate all that stuff. I'm just saying that all they need is a complaint by somebody over some matter that might not have even been important. Maybe that didn't even happen. Maybe somebody just got mad at you. Maybe you broke up with somebody. Maybe you offended somebody, and they decide to file a complaint. It's anonymous. It can never come back to them, and then the corporation can strike you down.
Well, it's funny, the thing about when I said when I was talking about Walmart and they failed in China, I don't remember the reason, but they tried to go to Germany, and they Walmart, I don't know about now, but back then.
Hopefully they didn't do a mural.
No, they didn't. This is why they failed. It's been so long ago, and I don't know if they still do this, but they used to have a system where you could supposedly any worker had the ability to tell or complain about any other worker.
Oh yeah.
Or supervisor. You could, so in theory, I never would do anything like this, but in theory, if you worked in a Walmart and a supervisor was giving you problems, you could complain to the district manager, whatever they were called, and so forth. And they had a phone service or tip line about this. You call, and they instituted the system in Germany, and the people were creeped out because this reminded them of the Stasi.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's
So,
right.
so it's just the workers didn't like working at Walmart in Germany. Then people didn't want to shop there. It just didn't work.
Yeah, well, and I don't necessarily think that it will become automatically standard practice everywhere, but we already see corporations doing this with morality clauses in their contracts. If you say the wrong thing online now, you can be fired. No questions asked.
Well, I mean, as we speak, there's a story about who is this person. It's on the Drudge Report. Or was. Tucker Carlson. There was a story on here saying that he's got his top writer, that he reads a teleprompter, that his top writer for the show has gotten in trouble for saying all these things on message boards, racist things and things about women and so forth. And now
Yeah.
people are mad.
Well, and here's the problem. The problem is that, okay, if we're going to get rid of him for that, then the corporations, that's the morality thing. So if people aren't allowed to say that, then they can then restrict other speech. It's not that.
Oh, actually, this guy's already resigned today.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I didn't. Well, resign.
He said this is what he said.
He wanted
Things
his pension.
he was just cursing at people all the time. I mean, just.
Yeah, he was an ass, and that's fine. I pardon my French. I've got no. But see, the whole thing is that if that's going to be the standard, that's why I think we see. I mean, and that guy, you can actually make an argument for somebody who's just being out and out misrepresenting the company. That's an argument that can be made. But now you have people trying to do the same thing to people like Steven Pinker, who they want him thrown out of associations because he said something that they don't like. And there's no end to it is the problem, is that the moralizing that some people are doing is the same sort of moralizing the corporations are doing. They're trying to set up a morality code that, first of all, I think something that never gets brought up is these corporations and these people, they don't have any authority. They have no legal standing. They're just zealots. That's it. They have no right to do what they're doing. So they should stop or they're going to be sued eventually by enough people. So but getting back to the moralizing, and the moralizing is also a justification means. If everybody is focusing on other things that the corporations are moralizing about, they're not focusing on what the corporations are doing, like, pilfering the treasury under the CARES Act. We all get a $1,200 check, and they help Francis Ford Coppola and Kanye's latest projects, and give a few trillion to all the major corporations that already had money or made bad bets, and they covered their bets. But the American people get nothing. The American people get left out in the cold as we are now approaching a possible depression, the rising rates of the coronavirus, and the unemployment insurance will be ending soon. So that's what we get. So that's why corporations, they don't care. Like, if corporations cared, for instance, all the corporations that are supporting Black Lives Matters, if they really cared about Black lives, they would go into these neighborhoods that they say they care about, and they would then fund the rebuilding of them. If they cared, but they don't care. Just like they don't care about the average person, because the average person doesn't have the money for them to care. So they're money-making entities. And when they say that they care, I'm sorry, but they're lying. You can look in Time magazine. What was it? The CEO of Patagonia said that young consumers are more likely to patronize brands whose business models claim to include social change. That's why they do it. They just said it themselves.
Well,
they want
just
to make
look
money.
at Starbucks and all the type of images Starbucks uses to make it look like they're environmental friendly and in their logos and things.
Exactly. It is a superficial mask to keep everybody smiling and thinking that they care. They don't. There are some businesses that do, but they're usually local businesses, and unfortunately, that's another group of people that are going to suffer in all this. They're the ones that are going to go down, and they're going to get bought up by all of these masked corporations who act like they care. And I'm not, some corporations are good for the economy, but some corporations, like you discussed with Chuck Ocelli last week, Mike, the zombie corps, there's a bunch that aren't. They're just parasites that are feeding off of the economy, kept alive by just making enough money in payments.
Well, unfortunately, that's now quite a lot of them.
Yeah. So. We need to open some graves up and kill these zombie corpses and roll them into the ground.
But so many. I'm looking at them now. I typed a Google corporate logo smile, right? And there's so many of these logos that are smiles. I mean, Amazon is a smile. In fact, now in their commercials, let's see this commercial where they got this guy delivering, on an Amazon truck, telling you how safe it is for him to do it, and he says, "I deliver smiles." But look at they get the logo. The logo for Wendy's is a smiling girl.
Oh yeah, well,
all these things are smiles.
Yeah, when you mentioned that there was a lot of smiles used in businesses, that's what helped me design the logo I used on my article, where I have the red smiley faces that are all scratched up, because everybody's smiling as the corporations stomp on our faces. Yeah, I mean, and that's what it is. They're projecting. It's kind of like, funny that you should have mentioned China earlier, but it's the same thing. They're projecting that always happy, keep smiling, everything's fine, nothing's wrong. Yeah, and I can respect a corporation that just comes out and tells me, I want to make money, but I'm going to give you something for your money. You're not going to waste
Right.
money. That's what
Right.
I can
Sure.
respect.
Sure.
I don't want them to be my friend. I'm not interested in befriending a corporation. I don't think it can teach me anything. Well, it can teach me not to trust people. But besides that, it can't teach me much of anything. So I think that's one of the many reasons. And when we see it too with the media corporations and the virus, I know we're trying to keep this to a limited amount of time, but basically I don't want to off-road, but so basically we see the media corporations taking sides on the virus argument when in the end they're all wrong. It doesn't matter why people went outside. It doesn't matter why they got into groups. It spread the virus. That's why we're seeing bigger numbers. The end. Everyone can argue about exactly what things did it, but guess what? Everybody that went out, you're part of it. So here we are. So let's not argue about this. It's happened. Let's deal with it, and let's not trust these corporations are going to. That was another funny thing I read in the Time magazine article. The CEO that was saying that was talking about it said when government fails, corporations need to step in. That's a bad idea. They're not elected. I don't think corporations should just step in. I don't think we should trust, and that's what makes me think, well, what happens if some of these advocates are successful and they are able to maybe not abolish, but really defund some local services, police, firemen, stuff like that. If that happens, who's going to step in? The corporation.
Well, in that scenario, that makes me think of that old, the original RoboCop movie.
Nice.
That's what I think of when someone gives that sort of scenario. Imagine a city where the couple corporations rule everything and own the police. And looks like a nightmare to me.
Well, yeah, we already have a statue of a RoboCop here in Detroit.
Are they going to destroy it?
No, it might be a sign of the future. It's crazy though, man. I mean, I don't think people are thinking long term. I understand why people are emotional, and I think that a lot of people are justified for some of the early stuff that happened. But we've gotten into chaos now. It's just, groups fighting. Nobody knows who's who. Police are retiring. I think in New York it was 400% rate of normal retirement. So we're just seeing larger and larger amounts of chaos, and the corporations are benefiting in some cases from this because they're putting on a nice face and acting like, you should, you're doing your part for a movement, whatever movement they support, by buying their products. When, and another thing like we discussed off air is that a lot of the things people are arguing about right now, you can go back 20 and 30 years and see that it is in some cases the same corporations now that are trying to put on this moral face that set up all the stereotypes that exist. All the things people are mad about that were perpetuated were set up by some of these same groups. And now they're saying they're bad and they're blaming the public rather than thinking about their large role. So I think a distraction is what is going on, that the corporations can benefit from the public fighting itself rather than focusing on the illegality and other activities that they have going on.
Well, they have a lot of power, there's no doubt about it. And there was a time when they hardly had any.
Yeah, when they used to only be able to own so many. That's another, the regulations have been weakened too much. We need to bring back some of those regulations. We need to break up some of these monopolies. Too few people have too much power.
Of course, their argument though would be, look, we're the people that are smart enough to create the corporations and run them, and we allocate the resources. And if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't even be able to live.
Well, and if that's
we're
the
the
argument,
masters.
Well, yeah, and if that's the argument they'd like to make, that's fine. But what I would tell them is that first of all, your corporation can't exist in a vacuum. You need the public to buy your products, or you don't exist.
Well, Henry Ford knew that.
Yeah. They need us. We don't need them. And that's what people have to remember. It shouldn't be. We should not be taking our cues from corporations. Corporations should be taking their cues from us. You know, not just when people want to get rid of somebody either. I'm talking about all the time. Like, if corporations want to actually invest in communities, then do it. Quit talking about it. Quit putting out T-shirts and hats and fireworks shows and passing out cake and cookies to everybody. Just do something, won't you, please? Won't you just quit talking, please?
Well, maybe one of them listening will do something.
It'd be nice. He'll send a $5 to help people out.
So, but I think everyone else should read your article. Yeah, so I'm gonna link to it, and they click the link, and also grab your book, Human Time Bomb, which touches on some of the times we live in now too.
Yeah, I wish that it. You know, a couple of the readers that I've talked to, they said it was pretty annoying how right I got a few things. I'm not saying I got it all right, but I think I got a couple spot on predictions as far as what's going on. Well, I mean, and it's a lot of experts have been talking about this for a long time. I just think that I might have put it together in a more accessible package that people can see, you know, new information and some of the enduring information that has come true. I mean.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me and everyone else. We'll talk again soon.
Good. Take care, Mike. I hope everybody out there has a good one.
You too.